Hi, I'm Edwina Murphy and I'm the lead cloud specialist here at Sungard Availability Services covering the EMEA region, and I've been working with customers going to cloud since 2008. Today, we're going to be looking at 5 principles that you should consider and provide some considerations around those when you are migrating to cloud. And those principles are around change, skills, better, faster, and cheaper. So first of all, we're going to look at change. And when we consider change, the survival of the fittest is an ageless law of business, but the fittest are rarely the strong. And we're going to talk through that concept in a little bit more detail as we go through today. The fittest are those that are endowed with the qualifications for adaptation, the ability to accept the inevitable and conform to the unavoidable, as well as harmonize with existing and or changing conditions within their businesses. So what does that really mean? Businesses need to enable themselves to have choice and more options so that they can adapt to those changes out there that are required. The ability of a business to evolve is a key requirement as to whether or not it will prevent itself from becoming extinct. And the agents of change can take many different forms. It can be external factors such as the pandemic, financial factors, it can be customer factors, increasing the demand that they want and expect from you, as well as, factors from competition and competitive forces or potential changes around merger and acquisitions or even cyber threats or unplanned events. Any of those can impact your business at any given time and you need to be able to respond to them. So adapt to the change. When we look at this, we're going to look at Amazon just briefly today, because if we look at them, in 1994, they were an online seller of printed books who were unburdened by the fact they didn't have physical locations and stores to fill, etc. So, their operating costs were lower than their competition, and that enabled them, to grow throughout the 90s. But as we know, they didn't just stay there. With the rise and availability of high-speed internet, they saw the opportunity to develop ebooks and e-readers. So again, further reducing their operating costs as they could now electronically distribute their books rather than physically for all their order fulfillments. And what this actually enabled was their infrastructure was then able to expand out to the rest of the marketplace. And as such, now we see groceries, furniture, clothing, to name just a few of the items that, you can buy on Amazon. So they've completely expanded, and they also became a marketplace for other retailers within it. But then in 2006, they launched their platform, their cloud computing platform. And the reason they did this was to be able to launch new applications to scale to meet that customer demand that was ever increasing in the marketplace without being burdened with monolithic IT. So they began renting out their tools and platforms to other organizations that wished to sell on there, but then rapidly expanded to become a services company that could rent its technology, applications, tools to an array of organizations, and most importantly, a diverse range of use cases. So they were first to market with public cloud, offering artificial intelligence, support development of robotics, as well as traditional servers, and a number of over 200 fully managed services that they can deploy to the marketplace at speed. And this is a company that continues to adapt. And this is where this is really, really important. What we're going to look at now is that whole, adapt or die scenario. So we've covered off Amazon, and then I want to talk about Nokia. No company is too big, no brand too strong to prevent themselves from failure. It can happen to anybody at any time. Nokia were the mobile phone market leaders, and despite a CEO who was absolutely fantastic, loads of industry experience, and took them to the pinnacle of where they wanted to be, they still failed to see the relevance of the Apple iPhone. In fact, it was dismissed as something gimmicky that eventually people would tire of and it wouldn't really sell. If people wanted a laptop, they would simply go and buy a laptop. That wasn't the function of a phone. And we've seen how that has evolved. So ultimately, that leadership team also failing to adapt and react to the marketplace saw the decline in that particular mobile phone provider at its peak, and they've never really truly been able to recover to the number one spot. So we've seen Apple go up, and then we look at Kodak, and they're no longer here with us. And ironically, they invented the digital camera. And where they absolutely went wrong was their business. Again, they failed to adapt. They continued with their existing target operational models, their business processes, and remained largely on premise and did not evolve like Amazon did in terms of the way they interact with their customers from a speed perspective and accessibility. They weren't able to provide a service to the home. So, there was no convenience or better customer experience, even though they had invented the digital camera. And that's where we look at, the importance of adapt or die around those cloud principles that we will go through in a little bit more detail. Netflix, classic example. Everybody knows them. They use analytics. They use cloud computing and so on and so forth to take the content to the customer that is relevant. That means the customer is still engaged, and that means that drives their revenue. People will continue to use it. And that is another example of a company that uses cloud to adapt and change within the market conditions it needs to in order to succeed. So if we look at the skills, new reports from Gartner reveals that organizations that adopt cloud quickly realize that the skills needed in cloud are not the same as on-premise. And these range. Research with 451 has identified things like cloud platform expertise, cloud native engineering, DevOps skills, all as areas where businesses are struggling once they are in the cloud. And the key thing to remember here around adapt or die, getting to the cloud isn't enough for your business to yield its benefit or realize its true value. And we will go through that when we talk about it potentially being cheaper. It needs to be a constant continuum and iterative process if your business is going to continue evolving. And the IT must be aligned to that business strategy, as well as the skill sets to keep you moving once you're there. We've seen a lot of organizations adopt cloud but infrastructure as a service only, and therefore they are not evolving as quick as their competition. As part of that research, the interesting statistics that have come out as well is how businesses are planning to attack this. What is their plan of attack around cloud skill shortages? And interestingly enough, 67% are saying that they want to retrain the skills in-house and deploy it that way, which is fine. But that does still create some gaps. And the reason for that is because cloud is constantly releasing services at a rate that is incredibly hard to keep up with. So if your business, your core focus is non-IT, it is really, really difficult to keep an eye on those emerging technologies and figure out where it is your eye needs to be on the ball in terms of that. As well as interpreting the data from the cloud providers, that is also something that requires a lot of skill set, even when it comes to cost optimization and so on and so forth. What that will do potentially is create key dependencies in your personnel as well within your organization. So you need to assess this from a risk profile from your organization. A lot of people move to cloud to remove site dependency for all the reasons we know, but actually in going to cloud as well, you don't really want to have key people dependency. So potentially you absolutely want to work with the partner as well, perhaps in a co-managed fashion or something to that degree, so that you don't have that reliance. The other aspect on the surveys when we look at the skills gap is 50% of the employees in organizations that have migrated to cloud already don't have any cloud certifications. And this is where we're seeing organizations saying we're struggling with our costs, they're spiraling out of control, we're not quite sure what to do. And that's because they're onboarding, they're getting into cloud, but then realizing that iterative process needs to continue. So it's a completely different skill set. And some skill sets are more transferable than others. So a network engineer, for example, in a traditional on-premise environment, can still offer a lot of value when it comes to adopting a cloud strategy from that networking perspective. In fact, it's imperative. But a third line engineer who typically fixes maybe some hardware or software, is not going to be able to add value in that cloud deployment when it comes to writing things like infrastructure as code. And that's quite a skill set to be learned over a period of time. So the other drawback of potentially doing it in-house is your speed to market. It is going to take you longer. No one's saying you shouldn't do it in-house, but it begs the question, just because you can do it, should you do it? And evaluate it all as much as you possibly can. So we've covered off change and we've covered off skills, and now I'm going to look at the next three topics. I'm going to kind of bundle them together really under what I call the market value of change. So 1, will it be cheaper? 2, will it be faster? And 3, will it provide a better service? And all these three things are really, really important. They matter a lot, because if you don't have at least one of these that you're trying to target, you're probably not going to have a very successful cloud-enabled transformation. So you should be able to yield at least one of them. Customers should not move to the cloud for cloud's sake. They should do it for the business value that the solutions offer. And it's key to understand what that value really, really means to your business. What difference is it going to make? Is it going to be cheaper because you can reduce your cost to deliver your goods, for example? Is it going to be faster because you can transact faster to get more clients? Or is it going to provide a better experience so you can displace your competitors and gain a larger share, back to, Apple and the Nokia example? So we will look at these in a little bit more detail individually. So first of all, when we're looking at cheaper, if you, back to the point earlier on the skill sets, just migrate to the cloud and infrastructure as a service and don't have those skill sets to continuously develop into platform as a service and software as a service or serverless computing, and you just lift and shift as is, you will see moderate to potentially no savings at all. It's just not something you should do if that's your driver. Now, if you are going to change how you consume a managed service or a platform as a service or cloud native functionality, then yes, you can potentially do it. So when done in isolation, no. But when combined with innovation to drive the business forward in a new direction, then the answer can be yes. So for example, why use an email and web server when an email and web service can deliver the same outcome and potentially more? And that's more akin to moving towards that serverless computing model, where you don't have infrastructure sat there idle, wasting resources, which could save money. So when we look at faster, will moving to the cloud enable me to be faster? And often the answer for this one is yes. If you have a cloud culture, organizations can enable the automation that enables you to, transact faster, develop your apps faster, and use those cloud native toolings and services so that your time to market can be faster by easily adding and removing resources more effectively than you would traditionally be able to do on premise. So for example, during the pandemic, many home workers were able to access their company resources using cloud desktops. If that had been done from a traditional basis where they had to go and procure the laptop, build it out, and then deploy it and deliver it to remote users, then the ability to react to that change would have been much slower. So yes, it should be able to enable you to work faster, and that should then provide a better experience and so on and so forth, so you can change to the working demands. So the final one, will it be a better experience? This is always an interesting one, and it's probably the most complex to answer because it's so niche to every individual business, and everybody measures costs in a different way. So the first task that I always say is it going to be better? The question is, better for who? Cloud can be the enabler that allows companies to provide a better experience. Back to the Netflix example, where they combine personal data with machine learning and analytics to individualize that customer experience with content recommendations. And that keeps the engagement. Also, is it going to increase your resilience posture so that actually your business is more robust, which means customers are going to be able to access what they need when they want it? So you may add high availability to your disaster recovery strategy, for example. So in that case, yes, it will absolutely be better. your customer experience can be better. And also cloud collaboration tools are really changing productivity in the workplace by default, as we see the continued increase with Microsoft 365 and the G Suite, enabling people to work faster from everywhere, from anywhere at any time. And for me, I would say that, finally, I guess the democratization of innovation is enabled by making the latest tools and services available to developers via a rental model, such as transcoding services, data analytics, and function as a service. So these are all things that will make your business better. It's measuring them that tends to be the difficulty and the challenge. So being better, faster, cheaper, it does matter a lot. And so much so that if you don't have at least one of those, then it's probably, not something you will succeed in. So just taking that better to one step further around serverless benefits, as I've just touched on, let's examine that specific cloud native approach. With traditional servers, you're paying for the compute resources you're utilizing, whether you're using them or not. And with serverless, you're only billed when an application is actually being executed, or in fact, more specifically, when the code is being executed. So the management of the back end is being taken care of. And that means that you can completely focus on your applications, your customer experience, and spend all your time there adding value to your business. This allows the integration of separate systems to deliver more value, such as gaining metrics from the Internet of Things to inform inventory levels, for example, and therefore optimizing those costs. Another example is how the banking industry is transforming their core banking applications into web, account, and transaction functions that communicate with a common database backend. And this has numerous benefits, such as the cloud application being tailored to the customer's needs, being charged for the execution of the web account or banking transactions instead of servers that are consuming spend when idle. And that's enabling them to be dynamically scalable and resilient. So that is introducing transformation into banks to provide a better user experience and develop and release these features in a fast, cost-efficient way. We are seeing challenger banks sometimes now redeploying their code up to 4 times a day to stay as current as possible with that user experience on their applications. And you will never be able to achieve that rate of change with an on-premise architecture. So in summary, when staff are freed up or transformed to enable the delivery of the cloud strategy instead of designing, building, operating, and maintaining their infrastructure, organizations are better able to provide governance, scalability, resilience, cost efficiencies, and operational excellence. Only strategic decisions around cloud computing will enable organizations to become purposeful and adaptable to the emerging agents of change that we discussed. This can be achieved by defining a cloud strategy coupled with proven measurement mechanisms such as better, faster, cheaper. Thank you.